The Fearsome Twosome is brought to you by the Showtime original series Ray Donovan, starring Emmy nominees Liev Schreiber, Jon Voight, and special guest star Susan Sarandon. Ray is back doing what he does best, solving the problems and bearing the secrets of LA's rich and famous. Ray Donovan returns Sundays at 9, only on Showtime. Download the Showtime app now and start your free trial. Welcome into the Fearsome Twosome podcast. The Rams are quickly approaching their first preseason game Saturday against the Dallas Cowboys. I'm Lindsey, Thiry.
And I'm Gary Klein, and we are on the road. We've taken the Fearsome Twosome podcast on the road. We are operating out of the shadow of the LA Stadium Premier Center, where the Rams and the Chargers will be trying to sell people stadium suites and seats.
Gary, they tried to sell you some. Are you telling me you didn't buy any? Take out that pocketbook.
A little bit out of the league of a sports writer's salary, I think. They haven't even actually published or released how much those suites and seats are going to cost. But my sense is probably out of a sports writer's league.
Gary, don't tell people how much we do or do not cost. These people think we actually probably make the big bucks.
They would be wrong. They would be wrong.
The Stadium Event Center, that we saw the whole model of the stadium, the auditorium kind of situation that they have right off of it, the shopping district. But before they took us in to see that entire model, which was huge, we watched a video of perhaps what they kind of envision the LA NFL family to be. These kind of things, Gary, what was your impression? I know that I have a certain impression and almost an expectation when I see videos that are meant to be pump-up videos. But what did you think?
Well, I think it's hard when you've been in the business a long time, when you're a sports writer, because you're not really the target market. You know, you're not the enthusiastic fan that's coming in to possibly purchase seats for your favorite team. So I think, you take that in differently. I could definitely see the way they were targeting that and how they want to get people excited, whether it's for the Chargers or for the Rams. But from a presentation standpoint, I thought it was very good in terms of hitting my buttons. I'm just saying, in hitting my buttons, I can't say that it did, but that's, again, I'm coming from it from a different angle. What about you? You've been on the stadium preview circuit.
I have. So I kind of tried to take off my reporter hat when I went into this. I left my notebook at home, and I went in and thought, okay, if I'm a fan, how am I looking at this? And I thought it was really cool. The doors open up, and it's like you're walking into a Hollywood premiere. And as a fan, I have to tell you that things easily appeal to my emotions. When I'm on the couch and I watch a team win the championship, I'm either jumping up and down screaming, or there's like maybe a tear welling in my eye. Like the weirdest emotional stuff happens to me. If you show me a great pump-up video, like, the hair on my arm stands up, I didn't feel anything. I don't know if that was just a sign of me getting older or what, but I didn't feel anything when I watched this video. And I was kind of bummed out. I was like, I wanted to kind of feel the goosebumps, and I wanted to, but it didn't really strike me. Maybe because I'm not a person who, at the end of the day, is going to be able to buy club seats or a club box. But I expected a little bit more out of the video. Emotionally, it didn't quite hit any buttons for me.
Well, again, I think that might just be because of the kind of profession we're in, where we're going to take desensitized. Well, I'm just saying we're going to take a step back, and we're going to consume that in a different way than a fan would. In terms of the production value and all that kind of things, it was first rate, top notch. But in terms of moving us, again, we're not the target market. My only question when I look, and we'll get to the stadium model, was where's the press box? Where are we going to be sitting?
We're in some corner where we'll probably be looking up and watching the game on this amazing. It looks huge. It's gigantic. This ring that goes around the perimeter of the field.
The Oculus, is that what they're calling it, or Octagon?
And you can see the inside of the ring has monitors. The outside of the ring, all a big monitor. So kind of no matter where you're sitting, they say, you should be able to look up and see, replays or stats or whatever it is you want from your big screen in the middle of a stadium.
I think it's interesting that they're doing this, as we mentioned here, in Playa Vista. You're not really on the stadium site. So in terms of the different looks that they can give you and the way they can change things out in terms of your view from different types of suites. I think, and I'm sure you can do that. They'll do that with the regular seats as well for fans. I think that's interesting. But you're walking into an office building.
Yeah.
You know, and I will say, as you mentioned, as you come off the elevator and you kind of make that first entrance into there, if you are a fan and you're coming down here to possibly purchase seats, I think in that way it's going to have it will have an effect on people. But it's kind of strange to think that you're not even on or really near the stadium site. But I guess that's part of, in terms of putting this kind of thing together, in terms of how they design it and how sales go. They want to get you kind of into that cocoon where you're really not even thinking about that. Once you're into that environment, that's where you are.
I continue to be really impressed with the kind of the pictures, the graphics of what the stadium, the renderings of what it's going to look like. It's very LA. It's very, palm trees and greenery with really beautiful wood structures and beautiful white tables and chairs. So it really is kind of a fresh feeling to it, and I think that's really cool. It's really unique how it's going to be open air on the sides, the roof, see-through roof, so I guess you're going to watch the airplanes land above you. I think that's really pretty cool. So as far as the stadium itself, I was blown away. I mean, it looks as cool as any stadium that I've seen. I expected a little bit to feel a little bit something more than just, a wow factor at the stadium.
Now let me ask you, what's the most you've ever paid for a ticket to something, whether it was a concert or a ball game or some kind of event where you were able to, you went into your pocket and thought, you know what, I'm going to spend money?
Gary, I can't remember. I'm trying to think of like a concert or, I don't know.
No Britney Spears shows?
No, but
where
that was like when I was in the
piggy bank or something like that?
7th or 8th grade. I mean, no, I was going to say Britney Spears at the Mercer Arena in the 8th grade, perhaps 7th grade. Was it 6th grade? Anyway, sometime in between 6th and 8th grade. And I remember, emptying the piggy bank or my allowance to go to that. But I don't really go to a lot of places where I have to pay for tickets anymore.
Well, interesting. I think for me it was.
You go to a lot of concerts.
No, I don't go to a lot of concerts.
I see you on Instagram.
No, I don't go to a lot of concerts. But when I go, I'm one of those people that never buys tickets when they come out. It's always like, they're playing. We should go.
I spent an arm and a leg on Stagecoach tickets once.
And was it worth it?
I mean, when I found out $1,000 at Stagecoach weekend or $1,000 to go to Hawaii, you make the choice there.
Well, the thing that's interesting about the stadium is people in LA have never had to pay for PSLs. They have paid for suites at Staples Center and whatnot, but that is, years down the road now in terms of when it's going to open. So we'll see how people pony up.
I'm excited to watch the game there.
I think the venue itself looks pretty impressive. It looks like their ability to change things out and stage different events, whether it's a football game or the Final Four. Not that I'm a fan of basketball games in arenas that large, but and the Olympics and all those other kinds of things that they're going to be able to have there. It's gonna be something to see when it opens.
You're gonna be excited to see T Swift rock in that place. I know you'll be there. Those are tickets you'll pay up for. All right, let's get on to some football. If you want to check out any videos or photos of the stadium renderings, you can check out Gary's Twitter at LA Times Klein. You can check out my Twitter at Lindsey Thiry. I know the LA Times also posted. Nathan Fenno posted a nice story with some great photographs that went along with it. So you can check all that out. But Aaron Donald, let's get back to Aaron Donald. He has still not arrived at Rams camp. It probably affected the way the defensive line looked when they held a practice with the Chargers last Saturday. They're going to practice again with the Chargers on Wednesday. Of course, at this point, who knows if the coaches really care about having him at any of these practices. They just want to know he's going to show up at some point.
And I think that's their hope still. I know I've said it either on the podcast or on some of our videos that I said he will be here at some point during training camp. He's
Are
not.
you
He's not here
walking
yet.
that back?
I'm not walking it back because they still haven't even played their first preseason game. But my sense is that they're further apart than maybe I initially thought. That this is a situation where, with the way that the market's changing, the way the NFL salary cap moves and stuff, maybe this isn't as easy as it would seem.
And it's so interesting because there's two sides of this. You have the fans who say, he's been a great player, pay the man. But you also have the Rams who say, we only have X amount of dollars we can spend, so how are we going to spend those dollars? And so if the Rams overpay Aaron Donald, and then they have to go sign a few guys or re-sign a few guys, whatever it is, in the next few years, and they don't have the money, then it's kind of a double-edged sword. Fans are mad at them for not signing Aaron Donald. Then they're going to be mad because they don't have the money to sign somebody else, perhaps. And when you really look at it, a defensive lineman, this was great. I heard this on a friend's podcast. A defensive lineman, you look at the Vegas odds, it only moves the scale by about a point because they just don't impact the game as much as, say, a big quarterback. Yeah,
and that will be the argument, if you're the Rams, I think, when they're talking about the dollars, and you look at Ndamukong Suh and Von Miller, those top paid guys, top paid defensive players, my sense would be that the Rams recognize that Aaron Donald is in that league, But the interesting thing about the contracts now that's different from the old days, that needle keeps moving every year. With how do you factor in? If you're a player, even if you're getting an offer that is going to make you, let's say, the highest paid player, is that still appealing to you if 2 years down the line that bar is going to be raised even higher? And so do you take the security, or do you press the team to bump it up even higher for that inflation that's coming?
Yeah.
And if you're the team, how do you deal with that? Because then you're totally overpaying, or you think you're totally overpaying for a guy. So it's really tough. And football, of course, so much different than baseball and basketball, where the injury risk is so high. If you're a player,
you want to get as much as you can.
You want to get as much as you can, and are you willing to take what you can when you can get it because it's guaranteed? It's an incredible dance.
It is an incredible dance. You're absolutely right. And it's going to be interesting because theoretically Aaron Donald isn't going to become a free agent anytime soon. So what does this do for their relationship? I know the Rams have said, and they will say, they respect him. And there's no doubt that they do. He's a terrific football player. By all accounts from all of his teammates, he's a terrific teammate. But is there a point where this starts to affect the long-term relationship? He's going to have to show up. He's going to have to play football unless he just decides he's not going to play.
Well, if he's this week, Tuesday, today, the day we're recording this, was a deadline that would affect players a lot if they were a first-round pick that hadn't had their fifth-year option exercised, or if you were a second-round pick, because this would be Aaron Donald's fourth season, and you need 4 seasons of service time to become a free agent. The fact that they exercised his fifth-year option makes that a little bit moot, but it does put now some pressure on him and his agents for next year, if in fact they don't show up this year, because you need that 4 years to become a free agent. As you mentioned, the Rams can control him anyway with the franchise tag and things like that. So the Rams have been very civil, or at least publicly, about this. Donald's representatives have not spoken publicly about it. In terms of, hey, we respect what's happening. We respect the other side.
There's so much respect.
There's so much respect going on. But at some point, and I guess that's the $100 million question, is what is that demarcation point where all of a sudden now this becomes it goes from being friendly respect to contentious and acrimonious.
We'll find out. I'm sure we will. Last Saturday, the Rams held a practice with the Chargers. I should say the Chargers hosted the Rams at StubHub Center. On Wednesday, the Rams will return the favor and host the Chargers at UC Irvine. First, let's go back to Saturday's workout. Gary, I know you were focused on watching the Rams offense. You were writing about the Rams. I was focused on actually watching the Chargers offense. I was focused that day on writing about the Chargers.
That was your assignment.
That was, yes.
Right? Some people, I think, were under the impression that you didn't see enough of the Rams to write about or something. Yeah. That was your assignment.
Yeah. Dan Wickie's getting married. Mike DiGiovanna decided to turn a year older. They said, hey, Lindsey, can you write about the Chargers for the day? So I did. But let's talk about StubHub Center. I know the Rams are not going to be playing in StubHub Center, but the Rams chose to play in the Coliseum, which the optics for some of those preseason games were amazing. The optics when they opened the season were amazing. 90,000 NFL fans. It doesn't get any more incredible than that. By the end of the season, it was a pretty sad sight, to simply put. How many fans didn't show up to have 90,000 seats, which is about 30,000 more than a lot of NFL stadiums, and then to have that half full the optics looked like it was very empty. Now you go to the StubHub Center, 27,000 seats, and that place, whether they're Chargers fans or Raiders fans or Seahawks fans, that place is going to look packed all of the time. What did you think of it?
I think that what I thought kind of came through. I think when that place is full, and even though the Chargers, I think, overestimated how many people were there the other day, because those were invited.
I don't think
those were invited
8,
season ticket holders. Even with a relatively small amount of people in there, with the way that those roof kind of things cantilevered over the stands, it gets loud.
It's gonna hold. It's actually a lot like the stadiums up in Seattle, Husky Stadium, Seahawks Stadium. StubHub has the roofs that kind of come over the upper level seats there, and it's going to help the noise echo in.
It's going to be very loud. And if the Chargers are good, we've talked about this on the podcast. If the Chargers are good, that's going to be a place to be seen. I mean, that is going to be a magnet for people, even if they're not. I mean, I just think it's so small that if you're a fan of any of the teams that they're playing and you can get tickets, I just think it's going to be a really unique situation. The sight lines, I think, are really good. They're different from a typical NFL stadium. You are really close to the field, and so, we'll see. Maybe at some point, I can't remember when it is in the schedule when the divisions align where the Rams actually may play the Chargers.
I haven't looked that far ahead. But the actual practice that day, the Chargers' defense looked pretty solid. Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, those are two pretty dominant forces on the defensive line. They got to Jared Goff a couple of times. There was no tackling. This makes it always a little bit difficult to see exactly what's going on. But Todd Gurley looked like he is running a few more. They're running a few more plays for Todd, and that the Rams' offense is starting to come together and show a little bit of life beyond maybe the few plays they ran last year.
Well, I think that was an exercise in on several levels for Jared Goff, right? Can't talk enough about him. Apologize if people are sick of hearing about it, but really, it's about him. Throughout most of that practice, I think it was kind of inconsistent. He made some shorter throws on rollouts and things like that, missed on a long pass to Cooper Kupp. But you get into the 2-minute drill when they're going ones versus ones, and he looked good. I think he was like 8 of 10. Took him down the field.
He flies in the 2-minute drills.
He does well in practices in the 2-minute drills. So it will be interesting to see if Sean McVay and his staff key on that and maybe make it a faster-paced offense in terms of for the Rams, in terms of in and out of the huddle or no huddle, whatever, if they capitalize on it. Because based on the sample size we've seen of Jared Goff, he seems to perform well in those situations. And I don't know if it's because the reads are quicker or there's fewer options or, what it is, or just it's closer to maybe what he played in college in terms of just lining up and running the play. But to this point, that's when he's looked best. And it was evident on Saturday. It will be interesting to see how that plays out Wednesday when they have a practice with him again, and most importantly, I think starting Saturday when they play the Cowboys, and we get a real look at seeing them in a game-type situation, even though it's a preseason game.
Right. The defensive line did not... the Rams basically played that practice without their starting defensive line. Aaron Donald, Robert Quinn, Michael Brockers, all those guys. Donald obviously not there, but Michael Brockers and Robert Quinn... They're taking it easy, and it raises the question how healthy they are.
Yeah, I think they're being careful with Quinn. He had the back issue several years ago. Last year, he had some issues that, prevented him from playing at 100%. So I think they're being careful with him. He's moved to a pass rushing linebacker spot in the 3-4. And my sense with him, watching him kind of work out, is that he doesn't appear limited, but they're kind of keeping him out of those full speed situations, at least to this point. Brockers seems like he's healthy, at least taking a lot of reps, doing a lot of different things. When they practice on Wednesday, it will be interesting to see what adjustments they've made.
A position group that's continued to stand out to me throughout all of training camp. By all of training camp, I mean a whole week and a half.
It seems like forever, though, right? It seems like about 3 weeks.
Training camp, you never know what day it is. You rarely know what time it is. John Sullivan, the center, told me the other day he only knew it was Sunday because Game of Thrones was on. So there you go. They don't know either. But the secondary has been a very energetic group. We won't really know how good they are until Saturday's game against the Cowboys when you see them going against a different offense. They didn't look too terrific against the Chargers. Phillip Rivers looked like he kind of had an easy day out there. But again, there was no tackling during that combined practice. But Aubrey Pleasant, he has really stood out to me as a defensive backs coach, just as somebody who's so energized. And it seems like the DBs have kind of fed off that. And last season, I just don't know that I ever noticed those guys. And this year, they have become very, very fun to watch, at least in a practice setting.
Well, they've been very vocal. He keeps them, I think, on edge, keeps them on point. I don't think we've seen any real surprises in terms of who's playing. Trumaine Johnson is going to start on one side, and Sean McVay said that Kayvon Webster is going to start on the other side unless something happens. That really isn't a surprise with Webster coming over from Denver with Wade Phillips. But I think it will be interesting, as we've talked about. He's been a backup. He's going to be a starter for the Rams, but he was a backup behind some Pro Bowl guys, and now we'll see who they're targeting, if they're going after Trumaine or they're going after Kayvon Webster.
Kayvon's an active Twitter user.
Okay, that's right. He is.
Yeah.
Huh?
Our friend and colleague, Rich Hammond at the OC Register, I thought made a fair, what am I trying to say?
Assessment of what was happening?
Assessment of what was happening in the practice with the Chargers, and he said that it didn't look like, paraphrasing here, that it wasn't the best day for Kayvon Webster, and Kayvon retweeted him and commented and said, I'm not sure what you were watching. Those are what sports reporters really live for, those kind of tweets.
I don't know about that. But maybe it's just for the players, it's getting along for training camp too. We had an interesting episode at training camp a few days ago in terms of mishaps and different kinds of things.
Gary and I put in very long hours at training camp. Most of the time it's just because we're too busy BSing with each other like we often are. But it was a Friday night at 9 o'clock. Yeah, I'll tell you, we live a really exciting life. We're sitting in the media tent at the Rams. The media tent's basically, a big white tent over the grassy field off in the corner. And Gary and I are working away, working. All of a sudden, the sprinkler heads come up. And Gary says, "Are those going to reach us?" And I said, "No." And Gary said, "Well, it's been a little damp in here sometimes when I've gotten here." And I'm like, "Gary, look at that sprinkler's dancing this way." And then it danced right back. I said, "We're fine. We're fine."
We weren't fine.
We weren't fine. Before you know it, we had a sprinkler shooting us from one side. And as we started to pick up all of our equipment, thousands of dollars worth of computer and camera equipment, a sprinkler from the other side started shooting at us. Point blank range. Imagine just taking a fire hose, not a fire hose, more like a garden hose.
That's what it felt. It felt like that when it was hitting computers and phones and notes.
It's like take a garden hose, stand at point blank range, and just start shooting someone. And they make that scrunched up face at you probably. Gary's screaming, "Lindsey!" And I'm screaming, "Gary!" Thank goodness, as one of the Rams PR folks pointed out, thank goodness there were no security cameras or any sort of video footage in there, because if you had seen Gary and myself running around trying to save our computers and our equipment from the water, it was pretty funny.
Well, I guess those are kind of the training camp mishaps that break it up and keep it livable.
Yeah. But back to football, because that's what we're here to talk about, and that's what people apparently sometimes do or do not want us to talk about. The receivers. It's been an interesting group. Tavon Austin is their speed guy. He's their big money-making guy. And he's also a guy who seems to be hurt quite often lately, through the summer with a wrist injury and now that hamstring issue, which Sean McVay called minor, but a hamstring issue, I don't know, you can call it minor, but it seems like it's always a nagging type thing.
Especially for someone like a speed guy like Tavon.
It reminds me of when George Farmer. Remember SC George Farmer? And what did somebody make the analogy? Like he's a Ferrari, and you have to warm him up outside the garage or whatever. Gary, take it away.
Well, it was something like that, but very, very delicate type of high-end, kinds of machinery, if you will, or whatever. Yeah. Sean McVay initially said it was going to be, was minor, was a day-to-day thing, but it's been a week, and he has not practiced. Josh Reynolds, the rookie, also is not practicing. And that really does, if it continues, if the Rams are without a vertical threat, because Mike Thomas is not going to be available for the first 4 games, that impacts that offense. As dynamic as Sean McVay's offense was in Washington, he had the benefit of Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon on the outside. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a deep threat, that prevents you from being able to stretch the field.
What was happening in practice I don't know what day today is. Today's Tuesday. What was happening in practice on Monday? Because I think from a receiver standpoint through training camp, that was probably the worst performance collectively that I'd seen from them. Guys who don't normally drop balls. Robert Woods, a ball hit him square in the hands and just bounced right off. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like those guys weren't on the same page all day.
Well, something was up. Cooper Kupp had a nice over-the-shoulder catch for a touchdown from Jared Goff. But I think you're right. For the most part, it just seemed really inconsistent.
Yeah.
And that's something that, if you're Sean McVay and you're standing back there watching it, it strikes me when you're coming from an offense that was so productive at Washington with a quarterback who has a little bit more experience and some receivers that were, high-end guys, that's got to be frustrating and a little bit concerning. Of course, it's before we haven't even played a preseason game, right? We haven't even seen.
There's 4 preseason games, Gary, and we're exhausted after a week and a half.
Not necessarily exhausted, but I think you can't get a real read on this until you see what happens in a game. But you can get clues, and I think those kinds of days where collectively it's not just one guy, when more than one guy is experiencing those kinds of issues, kind of harken to last season when we saw a lot of drops, and that's something that. Wow, if that's what's going to be out there this season, then fans, you mentioned there were no fans there at the end last year. If that's something that becomes pervasive this year, it's going to be problematic.
I hadn't seen any drops like that until Monday. Mm-hmm. So it just seemed like maybe just an off day. Sometimes it's contagious. It's an off day for everybody. The social media favorite this season is Cooper Kupp. Remember last year everyone was all in on Nelson Spruce. Cooper Kupp is the social media favorite because, why not? Who doesn't like a little guy that can kind of thing? But what do you think? When you look at him and realistically what you've seen through workouts, seen some nice catches. Also seen a few times where he's been hit and the ball comes popping out.
You're right. That's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. I think he's working with the ones. He is going to be a big part of that offense.
A big part.
And I think for the most part, he has kind of shown what we expected in terms of the description of him and in terms of his resume coming out of Eastern Washington. He seems like a very heady guy and knows the offense. Jared Goff seems to have some rhythm with him. Mm-hmm. So he'll be a big part of it. I don't see him as a guy that, again, is going to stretch the field, is going to get behind anyone necessarily. Mm-hmm. But on those mid-range routes, he's looked good, and he's caught the ball in traffic, near the end zone. So I think you got to be encouraged. If you're the Rams, to this point, you're encouraged.
Absolutely encouraged.
Yeah.
Absolutely encouraged. I just don't know that he's going to be the superstar that some perhaps are. I think he'll be a very good player in the NFL. But I think you have to temper the expectations of kind of what their receiving core looks like and the growing pains sometimes of a rookie.
Yeah, and I think Woods will will be the lead guy at this point, especially with Austin out. What we don't know is what's Josh Reynolds going to bring to the table. I mentioned Mike Thomas is not going to be there for the first 4 games. Nelson Spruce is being Nelson Spruce. Looks pretty good. Paul McRoberts, is pushing for a spot. But with the injuries, I think it's kind of hard at this point to exactly project who's going to end up there, because we don't know if this is a long-term thing for Tavon or if this is something that's going to be managed and he's going to be available.
One of my favorite parts of training camp goes back to the rookie day when they reported to camp, and Gerald Everett, when he said, we're going to be better than those Redskins tight ends. And Sean McVay the next day said, pump the brakes, pump the brakes. Gerald Everett has looked pretty solid through the first week and a half of training camp. I'm not saying he's Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed great, but he has looked like a dependable tight end in the passing game.
He's looked very good in the red zone. He's made some really nice catches with 2 guys on him. He made a spectacular catch the other day in the back of the end zone, going up to get it and kind of taking it over another guy. Unfortunately for him, he came down with his foot out of bounds. But
was with the Chargers? Or was it?
I can't remember if it was with the Chargers or if it was in practice.
He reached over the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was at StubHub.
Okay. But anyway, he's showing the kind of athleticism and playmaking skill that I think you're gonna see him stretch the field a little bit after the catch. I think that was one of the things that attracted the Rams to him was his ability not only to catch it but to kind of extend plays, and he's done that several times in practice. So, the combination of him, I don't know that Tyler Higbee is going to be able to break away like Everett may. But if he can, give them a dependable pair of hands, and Tamarick Hemingway, is out there. I mean, they're going to use their tight ends. I don't know how much they're going to throw to him necessarily, but they're going to be out there on the field. And to this point, I think Gerald Everett has looked really good.
I think so too, which is kind of just fun to see. It'll be a fun story to monitor, I think, with Gerald Everett. One day, do you think we'll look back and we'll say, remember when Gerald Everett said this, and we all kind of laughed and thought, oh, this young man's ridiculous, and why not him?
He didn't backpedal much. When I talked to him for a story I wrote on the tight ends, he heard what
his coach told him, right?
Well, he talked about, the Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed, those are great tight ends. They've done it a long time, and I've tried to emulate them. But I think we have top-notch guys, and we can be elite. And really, what do you want them to say? That's what you should say.
You want them to say, we're never going to be as good as them? You don't want them to say that. I worked on the story on the offensive line.
That's right. That was good. That was a great image. And I remember seeing it out there. I thought you did a nice job capturing Andrew Whitworth, who's just massive, right? This giant guy, and kind of carrying his kids as he's walking, like a jungle gym.
It's funny. I felt a little bit ridiculous asking Andrew Whitworth the other day. There was a group of reporters around him, and I was like, Andrew, I need to get one more question. And he goes, yeah. And he said, this is probably going to sound a little bit silly, but you're a really big guy. You're not big. You are really big. Do you notice people staring at you, when you're walking down the street? Do you even notice that among your teammates? You're a really big guy. And I looked at the roster, and there are a couple players who are his height and maybe even a little bit taller than him. There's a couple guys that weigh more than him. But when Andrew Whitworth walks on the field, you just stop and stare at him. I think I've done it every single day just because he is just so large, but he's also so fit, and he looks like an ox.
An ox?
He's just strong as an ox.
Doesn't
he look strong? I mean, so many offensive linemen are kind of a little bit roly-poly.
Right.
They look like they just got some baby fat maybe hanging around or something.
A little bit.
A little bit. Or a lot in some cases. He does not appear like that. This guy just looks strong. And there's something about his head. So he's big and he's bald. And he's just got this huge bald head. And I don't mean that in any mean or rude way. But he is just scary as heck looking. A very nice man so far. Very nice man. But he is somebody who, when he walks across the field, you stop and you look.
Well, as you noted, some of his
Gary,
friends...
you're a big guy. You're 6'4".
Well, but I'm not that big.
No, but you're 6'4", and he makes you kind of look small.
Oh, I'm sure, yes. He is one of those guys, like you said, you just turn your head. And the thing about him is, I mean, he's 35 years old, right? He's on the back end of his career.
Very back end.
He's played very well throughout his career, but especially the last 2 seasons, he's been dependable. He's been in every game. But it's like you said, it's just strange because he's so big, but he looks fit, and yet he's 35 years old. So it makes you wonder, from the eye test standpoint, you go, well, boy, he could be Tom Brady. He could play till he's 40. I don't think so.
Right.
But I think that was a good investment by the Rams. At left tackle, they needed someone solid to protect Jared Goff and influence that offensive line's attitude. And they have not played any games yet. We haven't seen how they really are going to block or how they're going to pass protect. But to this point, I think he's already had an impact.
The attitude part is just as big for the offensive line as actually playing football. To be an offensive lineman, it takes a certain kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Something that stood out when I was talking to Andrew was he told me that on Andy Dalton's first day of camp, or it might have been on Andrew's first day of camp with the Rams, that he received a text message from Dalton, who he used to play with in Cincinnati, that said, "It's another day to get better." Mm-hmm. This is going to sound a little cliche, but Andrew then started telling me about how guys always say, like, "Hey man, are you excited to be here today? Are you excited for this?" And he's not. You're not always excited. Are you always excited to go to work? I don't know. Gary, you might be.
I'm always excited.
I know you are. I know you are. But every day really is you might not be excited, but it is, especially as a football player, another opportunity to get better.
In any profession.
Mm-hmm. So that's what Andrew, it seems like kind of that's been his staying power is he says he's kind of stubborn. You got to be stubborn, and every day you have to just try and get better. But it was interesting to me that, he played a very long time with Andy Dalton, but that's the message they still send send back and forth to each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that if Andrew could just kind of impart some of that wisdom to a group that didn't seem to have a whole lot of strong leadership last season, that this offensive line will just be better off for that.
I think he already has. Jamon Brown has he talked about it during the off-season program. I know he talked with you about it again, reinforcing that. Rob Havenstein, he's a young guy too. Mm-hmm. He's huge, but he's only in his 3rd year. And Roger Saffold
now Rob Havenstein's a guy who's listed at a little bit bigger than Andrew Whitworth.
Well, Rob Havenstein is a big guy.
Rob is a big guy.
He's a big guy.
But Rob hasn't quite reached the physically scary level of Andrew Whitworth.
Yeah. Well, he's got time.
He's got time. He
got
can
some
lose
time.
some of that baby fat still.
And I was going to say, Roger Saffold has been in the league with the Rams. This is going into, I think, his 8th season. So he's another guy that gives them a veteran presence. Mm-hmm. That offensive line, it has to be better than it was last year. At least it has to perform
Gary, that
better.
Might be the most critical thing you've ever said.
No, I mean, some of that isn't all. It's not all their fault. I am a believer that that's a collective effort. It's not just the line. It is the running back. It's everything. The receivers running routes. All those things play into how an offensive line and a team works. But they just, they have to be better.
Yeah.
And I think they will. I think McVay's offense is something that may play to their abilities, and I just don't think we're going to see Jared Goff running for his life when Whitworth is in the lineup. I
don't think so. Also, I talked with John Sullivan, veteran center who they brought in to work with Jared Goff, and Aaron Cromer, the offensive line coach, explained to me just how important that relationship is, and to have a guy at center who can look up, read the defense, and help your quarterback out on any level is really going to help. So I think some will be taken off of Jared Goff's plate when he can have a center who will sit there and tell him what's going on and really be able to monitor and see everything that's happening.
It's all going to come back to Goff, right? We're all going to sit there and watch him, not just us but fans. And is he getting the ball out quick enough? Is he making the right reads? Is he getting rid of the ball when he should? All of those things are kind of interconnected, but we're all going to be looking at him.
All right, it's time to get into the best part of the podcast. You might be hearing a bus. That's because the podcast is taken on the road. If you missed the first part, I'm not sure why you have.
A few helicopters, a few sirens, a little nice ambient sound.
Why not? All right, the best part of the podcast usually, unless something else weird happens. David Harper Sr. asks, what are the realistic options at Easley's defensive line position? Dominic Easley lost for the season because of an ACL tear. Unfortunate luck for the Rams in the first week of practice, and especially unfortunate luck for Dominic, who has suffered 2 torn ACLs before.
Yeah, this is his third. So he leaves a big hole in their plan, I think. You know, Ethan Westbrooks who played on the outside, on the inside during his career with the Rams. He's working there at the moment. Louis Trinca-Passat, who was an undrafted free agent a couple years ago on the practice squad and then suffered a knee injury before last season. He's kind of a big guy. He's been working there. I think when we get through the preseason and guys become available, I think the Rams are going to be really looking at, defensive linemen that are either released for whatever reason, and they'll be in the market for some help there. Especially, if this Aaron Donald thing, keeps playing out. But I'm operating under the assumption that Donald will be there at some point. At some point. That listener raises a great question about Dominique Easley. He was productive for them last year and played well after coming over, after being released by the Patriots. And that's a hole they're going to have to fill. Maybe it's Westbrooks.
Frank O. asked, why didn't the Spanos and the Chargers open the Saturday scrimmage to all fans, but they want to, in quotes, fight for LA, #joke. The way it was explained to me, the Chargers wanted to kind of reward their season ticket holders. Also, they needed a soft opening for the StubHub Center. They haven't had a football team in there. They needed to kind of see how some things worked, and there was a fear. I heard there could have been a fear that if they opened it up to the public, they would have had more fans than they would have been prepared for and been able to handle. So it was just an easy decision for them to say season ticket holders and basically hold a soft opening. And
that prevented Rams fans from coming to the stadium and having a good time, but also kind of, maybe making
on social media.
Maybe making it tough for them. So I don't know. I don't know that you can necessarily fault them. The Rams are making theirs open to the public, but it's at their practice facility where kind of everyone can get in. So I'm not a fan, so I didn't have a problem with it. I think the Chargers probably made the right decision, as you mentioned, with a soft opening. And also operationally, I think just for parking, their parking lot attendants, for their ushers, all those kinds of people, the media people running the press box, to kind of get a dry run of what happened. The Rams did that last year when they had their practice at the Coliseum. They had a practice there. And really, that was for the fans, but that was for the team. That was for the operations people to really do a run-through before they got to the preseason.
Dave Schwartz asks, do either of you see the Rams winning more than 4 games this year? And if so, against which teams besides the Jags and the 49ers? Dave, I'll tell you this right now. I mean, you might be a first-time listener to the podcast, but Gary doesn't like to make predictions. He's probably going to say the Rams are going 8-8. So
how did you know that?
I've worked with you now for 5 years.
But let's think about that. If they do go 8-8,
that'll be terrific.
That's a pretty good season for the Rams. That's a very good season for the Rams.
But Dave asks if the Rams are going to win more than 4 games. I think they definitely are going to win more than 4 games. They do hit a rough stretch, though. You got to go to Jacksonville. They're going to spend the week in Jacksonville. After that, they're going to go to London to play Arizona. And then they have a bye week, and then they're going to go turn around and go right back to New York. And that's a lot of traveling. That's a lot of trips back east and a lot of time not in your own bed. So I think it's going to be really tough through that stretch. But by no means do I expect this team to win they should win more than 4 games.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say that they're going to go 8-8. And I think, Indianapolis coming in, that's a winnable game. Washington coming in with a new offensive coordinator, and Terrell Pryor is your number 1 receiver. Now he may be fantastic, but he hasn't played receiver that long.
They
so
can go up to San Francisco and beat the 49ers.
Yeah, they could lose. Who knows? They could lose all those games.
Too.
But I think those are among some of the winnable games. So we'll see. I think we'll start getting better clues on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. I think it's safe to say they're going to win more than 4 games. Mm-hmm. They had to work pretty hard last season to only win 4.
Right.
And they lost some games where they had a nice lead.
Lost to Miami, lost to San Francisco. They had some. They blew a couple games.
They won a couple games where they didn't even score a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't see it getting any worse than that. I can't see it happening.
Yep.
That's not to say it can't, but I'm going to be an optimist. Hey, to everyone who thinks Lindsey's a hater. Optimistic.
What do you mean? Do you get that a lot? Here's the thing. You're out there every day.
I'm very active with my mute button. I don't even read that stuff.
You are out there every day. You have a better sense than anyone of what's going on out there. You're speaking from an informed platform. You see it. You're talking to these guys. So your job isn't to be a fan. That's not my job either. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to be objective, and we're supposed to be honest and fair and balanced when we're reporting. But if things aren't going well, you should be able to say, hey, they're not going well, or that's a problem, or that's a potential problem.
Yeah.
So
Twitter doesn't think that way, but that's okay. I don't think like Twitter, so it's like a match made in heaven. Robert Schaefer. Hey, Robert. Good to see you back again. GK132. Last receiver spot, Spruce, Thomas, or McRoberts, or surprise, shipping on depth chart behind Woods. Robert, to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't taken a really good look at that receiver depth chart this season like I did last season, and we were really kind of mapping it out and saying who's going to get that last spot. Gary, have you?
Well, I think Shippen is not a guy that I see necessarily in the mix there. McRoberts was, on the practice squad last year. He's made some nice catches during training camp. So he may be in the mix there. But I think a lot's going to depend on what happens with these injuries. They just put Bradley Marquez on waivers. Mike Thomas came off the physically unable to perform list, and his situation is kind of weird because he can play during the preseason, but he's not going to be there for the first 4 games. So I think there's going to be some shuffling. They've signed a couple young guys as undrafted free agents, I think, just to take some reps here in camp. Mm-hmm. I don't think they have necessarily a realistic shot unless one of them's a special team standout. So I think with the injury situation, it's kind of tough to handicap at this point.
Robert Schaefer, one more. I'm going to give you. Can I call you Bob? All right. No camp leg to rest Hecker or GZ. At which would LT or GK 132 be better, PK or punter? Huh. I was a goalie.
Were you?
In middle school soccer.
Okay, so you had to kick the ball. You had to kick the ball for distance, right?
Be a punter.
You'd be a punter? Now, when I was a kid, our house was right next to a park, right? And the park sign, that was my uprights. So I kicked a lot of field goals.
Did you really?
Kicked a lot of field goals outside in the park. Never, didn't play high school football or anything.
You were too busy striking out Barry Bonds.
so I never got to put that to the test. But I'll make you the punter. You'll be the punter, and I'll be the field goal kicker.
Teamwork. All right, James Staley asks, how about some food recommendations near USC or the Coliseum for out-of-towners attending Rams games this fall? James, you know what the funny thing is? I don't really ever eat around the Coliseum because Gary brings me these amazing sandwiches, which I'm going to have to break it to Gary this season that I'm kind of on a little bit of a diet.
No carbs, huh? No bread?
I'm cutting out that bread.
Okay. You said it here. I don't want to see you giving me sideways glances when I'm
I know.
If I'm pulling those sandwiches out and I'm distributing them to someone else.
Halfway through the season, I'm going to change my mind, but for now, no carbs like that. The Coliseum wasn't built with a lot of restaurants in mind. Mm-hmm. Now the new LA Stadium built with restaurants in mind. I would say for out-of-towners who kind of want easy access to the stadium or the Coliseum, probably LA Live would be a good place to eat. I don't know. That's tough because there's just not a lot around there.
You know what? I think there's like a cheesesteak stand there now. There's a McDonald's, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for nice or good places. And I would say, I can't give the best informed opinion because I love Mexican food. So everything, kind of revolves around, what's down there. And there's a place near USC in a mini mall, La Taquiza, which I think is good. At least, I like fish and stuff like that, and they do a good job with that. But really, if we're not going to kind of go down our favorite taco restaurants in LA, which aren't all near the Coliseum, I think you can drive around the Coliseum and find one of those taco trucks, and you're not going to go wrong.
Yeah. That's tough. I just don't really eat around the Coliseum. If I do, I stop at Quiznos.
Uh-huh.
But I think people are looking for more of kind of, somewhere to sit down and probably eat before the game.
As a follow-up question, if that listener has some follow-up questions, they can email me directly at gary.klein@latimes.com, and we can get a little bit more specific in terms of what your radius is.
I'm really curious what kind of restaurants are going to go in around the new stadium.
Yeah. That's down the road, so we don't know.
Flipper Anderson, not the Flipper Anderson. I love these regulars that we get on the podcast. Asks, when do you two race in the 40? Flipper, the summer treated me really well. I ate out a lot. I'm off carbs. Give me a few weeks, okay?
Are we going to do that?
No.
We're not going to. So that's your polite way of telling Flipper that we're not going to race?
Did you want to race?
You know what? I was thinking about it because we were talking about this earlier. The last time I really ran sprints was, 8-10 years ago. My daughter was training to be a walk-on, right, at San Diego State. She was going in, and I told her, you got to be in top shape. And she did this regimen, and I did a lot of it, and I couldn't believe it. I was out there running sprints. I'm running quarter miles. At full speed. And I got in great shape. But I can't imagine going back and doing that right now.
Yeah, me either.
But the satisfaction of doing it and defeating you would be great.
It's about as honest as Gary's ever going to get. Because I'll tell you right now.
Only because you don't like losing.
Gary doesn't actually think the Rams are going 8-8.
Only because you don't like losing.
This is the most honest you're ever going to hear Gary. He doesn't actually think the Rams are going 8-8.
I do. I just know how much you don't like losing. It's not even that you like winning. It's you do not like losing.
Winning is fine. Losing is awful. TC asks, we kind of already addressed this, but TC asks, there has been a little news on Quinn's back. How is it holding up so far in camp? It's kind of a question. They hold him out. You don't really see him go all the way. Mm-hmm. But he wouldn't be, back issues are very serious, so he wouldn't be out there if it was bothering him, you think.
I think at this point they're just managing him. Now, I think once you have a back injury and you're an NFL player, that's going to be an issue from that point forward. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't seem to be debilitating where he can't be out there. He's lining up, with the first group. He's just not participating in, real actively. So with those guys who've been around that long, I know they're installing a new defense, and he's moving to a new position, or at least, he's standing up at times. He's doesn't have his hand down on the ground. So he has to, there's things he's going to have to work on. I just think they're being very, very careful with him. And like you said, with Brockers, with Aaron Donald out, they cannot afford, and Dominique Easley down, they cannot afford to start losing other frontline guys. No. And if that means that they're going to be held out and prevent us from getting a really great read on where they're at, then I think that's how they're going to move over.
With that.
Yeah, they don't care.
The first preseason game is Saturday. This is at Lindsey Thiry question for at Gary Klein or LA Times Klein. There you go. What are you going to wear? Is your black V-neck sweater all ready to go?
It's a little warm to be donning a V-neck sweater in mid-August, so I don't know. I'm going to have to. I don't think I'm going to have to think about that, but I'm going to have to make a decision. That'll be a game time decision, Lindsey.
Okay. All right.
How about you?
Gary, I just found out it's Tuesday. I will find out what I'm wearing. The game's at 6 o'clock on Saturday night.
Yes.
That decision will be made at 2:45 when I leave my house. All right. If you enjoy the podcast...
And you do.
I hope you do, if you're listening all the way through. Please go to iTunes and subscribe. Feel free to leave a rating, leave a comment.
5 stars.
Gary. You have to let the people decide.
Okay, all right.
You can always follow Gary. We have brought Gary to 2017, and it has happened quickly, but it is here. He's on Twitter at LA Times Klein. He is on Instagram, also at LA Times Klein. And we spent about an hour and a half going through a Facebook tutorial. And by we, I meant I gave Gary about an hour and a half Facebook tutorial. So he is on Facebook, and you can follow all of his work there. He's posting his articles,
videos,
sharing videos,
everything. You got it.
It is there.
It's all on that Facebook page. So that's what is that? That's Gary.Klein.LA-Times. Yep.
Have your kids commented, or have they said anything to you about your page?
What they've said is I need to up my Instagram game. They said it's great that you're on, but you need to become more active, and they're right.
Instagram is kind of tough.
Well, you got to learn it. Unless you're very young and
very attractive and know how to use a ton of filters and do that duck face thing.
What?
I don't know. I haven't done it. That's why my Instagram is not taken off.
Well, we're, like you said, moving into the 21st century here. So all that content, all that LA Times Rams content is on the Facebook page. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. And we're doing podcasts, and we're trying to do the best we can. So remember, as I said before, constructive criticism and suggestions always welcome. You can reach us on our Twitter accounts and also at our emails.
Yep. LA Times Klein and at Lindsey Thiry. And also, I have been on Facebook since 2005. 2005. That's 12 years of my life on Facebook. Oh, my gosh. All right.
I hope you took down all the incriminating photos.
Gary, that's on an account that I will not tell you the name. I don't go by my real name. But if you think that I ever had incriminating photos on Facebook, other than me and my awful ex-boyfriend, you're out of your mind.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that's going to do it for us. Gary's dying. We will see you next week on the Fearsome Twosome podcast, and of course we'll be out at practice. So don't be afraid to say hi, and if you have a question, we'll answer it there, or you can email us or tweet us or any of the above. Gary, it was fun. Any final words?
No. This will be fun moving into the preseason. We'll have some games to talk about, and it's always great. Thanks for all your questions.